This is the template that I made for the rear license plate of the Alfa. So the car has holes for the original 70s Italian license plate, which is 27.5 centimeters this way and 20 centimeters that way. So to place the US plate, I wanted to make a mount that's the same width, and that's 12 inches. And just for reference, a US plate is 12 inches by 6 inches. So the first thing to do is to translate this cardboard mock-up to the aluminum sheet with a Sharpie. Before we do that, actually, we gotta cut the sheet metal to the proper dimensions. Luckily, it's a 12 by 12 sheet, so I just had to cut one side. So all the markings on the cardboard have been transferred over to the sheet metal. And now it's time to punch out all these crosses where I'm gonna drill holes. I clamped the sheet metal onto the table vise and used a step drill bit to drill out the holes. These holes were drilled to match the original holes on the trunk. I used a file to remove all the sharp edges so it doesn't damage the trunk. I mocked it up just to see if it fits right, and I also rounded off the edges with a file just to give it a more finished look. It was all scratched up from working on it, and I wanted the brushed aluminum look. So to do that, I used a 3M sanding tool and 320 grit sandpaper to remove the deeper scratches. Make sure to keep your movements straight and not on an angle. When I wanted to work on a different part of it, I lifted the sandpaper completely instead of sliding it over. I then used a red Scotch-Brite pad and a sanding block. This gave it a good finished and uniform look, and these holes were drilled for the US plate. I ordered this dimple die set on Amazon for $85. It came with 3 different sizes and the quality is great. If you're interested in these, I'll leave a link to them in the description. So set the female part under the sheet metal and slide the male part from the top. When you crank the press down, you'll notice the sheet metal starts to bend slightly, but don't worry. Just keep cranking it and it'll eventually level out. You can see from doing this so many times on the sheet metal, it started to bend a little bit. Again, don't worry, as this can be straightened out later. The dimple die set left circular marks on it, so I just did a little bit of sanding again to remove them. Using some new hardware, I placed some nylon spacers behind the adapter just to give it some space from the body. Here are the original lights that mount into the original bumper. Because I'm not using the bumper for now, I had to figure out what to do with lighting the plate because I didn't want these wires running up and showing in the back. I know they did this on old Alfa race cars with, I think it's called a plinth. Even though this is a neat design, I just didn't like how bulky it was. It ruins the side profile of the car for me, so I had to think of another idea. I cut the bulbs off and fed the wires back into the body. There's another hole in the bottom of the trunk that it goes through, so I fished it out of there too. I used a wire stripping tool to get the 4 wires exposed, and that's 2 wires per light. So this is the solution that I came up with, and it's a bolt with a built-in LED. The wire goes straight through the bolt, which is kind of neat, so I didn't have to drill more holes for the wires. Oh, and as you can tell, I drilled and dimple dyed a bunch more holes, just cause it's fun. Feed the wires through the adapter, then through the body. Use the nut to fasten the whole assembly onto the body. Twist each wire nice and tight so there's no fraying. Slide in some shrink tubing on each set of wires. Match the wires up, obviously black goes with black. Hold them perpendicular to each other, and slowly twist them together nice and tightly until you reach the top. Then you're going to bend the twisted wire at the halfway point and fold it on one side. This creates a strong bond between the 2 wires. Then slide the heat shrink over the connection. Make sure it's centered so it covers all the exposed wires. Then heat it up for a few seconds and it should shrink it tight to protect the wires. Then tuck all the wires back behind the carpet and that's it. This is how the whole setup looks like without the US plate and with the US plate mocked up. Hope you guys enjoyed the tutorial and I'll see you guys next time.